One of the greatest online filmmaking debates of all time maybe is whether or not zoom lenses or prime lenses are better for getting professional results. Now, setting aside that there is no best in filmmaking, only what's right for what you're shooting, I'm in a situation right now where I need to do some serious testing because in the next 6 weeks, I need to spend around $250,000 on rental gear to set up 5 separate camera teams for a 6-week-long shoot. And so before I just start ordering stuff, I really need to know, is one better than the other? So in this video, I'm gonna be putting 3 zooms and 3 primes through a series of shooting scenarios to see if there are any clear winners. I've got some pretty popular options here, like these Fuji MK zooms, these Laowa Rangers, and then this $13,000 Ingenue that's kind of a popular high-end option. In the prime department, we've got some DZOs, some Sigma full-frame Cines, and our most expensive option, these Cooke SP3s. We're not gonna do sharpness charts or anything like that because I want to know what these are actually like to shoot with from an operator standpoint under varied conditions. And then at the end, we'll put them all through a blind comparison and see if anything jumps out from a raw image quality standpoint. It's going to be a long day, but by the end, I'm going to be able to put in my order to the rental house knowing I made an informed choice, and you should hopefully have a better idea of what your money gets you and what lenses you might want to invest in one day. Okay, so a quick bit of context here. I'm the lead DP on an upcoming mini-series, and there are gonna be 4 other DPs that I'll be sort of overseeing for a 6-week shoot, like I said. As the lead DP though, that means I'm in charge of picking all the gear and finding a visual style that fits the director's vision, all while keeping to our roughly $250,000 budget. And while that might sound like a lot of money, because it is, when you really start looking at outfitting 5 separate shooters though, it goes really fast. So the gear we're gonna look at is all stuff that is sort of in line with that budget. Plus, every dollar that we don't spend on lenses can be redeployed to pay for other things like specialist drone teams or an underwater DP or whatever other extras will really help make the show pop. So I have a pretty strong incentive to stay under that budget. Now, that's not to say that this stuff is cheap by any means. I mean, this is a $13,000 lens, but it's also not that expensive relative to what lenses can cost. If we went super high end, like ARRI Master Primes or something, we could easily spend 70% of our budget or something just on 5 sets of lenses, not to mention the cameras and all the other stuff we'd need. And I'm not trying to stack these up against ARRI Master Primes either, because that's just not really realistic for the show we're making. On the flip side of that, there's also no point in throwing in like a Sigma 2470 because the show's also too big for that. It's all about finding that sweet spot for what you're making. And in my opinion, the lenses we picked out today sort of fit that bill. But if you feel compelled to drop a comment about how shocked you are that I didn't try your favorite lens instead, that is, of course, your right as an anonymous troll. So have at it.
Have at it.
And I'll just say it again, there isn't a best choice here. There's only what's gonna work for us in our story. There's a lot more to keep in mind than just what's the best on paper, so let me just quickly break down what we need. This stock is all about intimacy and getting close to our characters. And on top of that, our field teams are very small with just 1 DP and a field producer working together, no assistants. So I need to choose stuff that's not huge and overwhelming to our characters, but also that isn't so big and heavy that our shooters can't hold it all day without someone to help them. I'm also looking to see which of these are the nicest to use from an operator standpoint, because that matters almost more than raw image quality in some ways. And I'm also really paying attention to close focusing distance, which is often really overlooked when it comes to dock lenses, because for this, I want to shoot very close to our subjects, and nothing's worse than a lens that won't focus up close. Then low light performance is nice, but not a huge deal because some of our cameras will be able to shoot natively at 4,000 or even 12,800 if we need. And then yes, the image quality matters, but I kind of expect them all to be good. More than just quality really, I'm looking at the character, because ideally we'll go with something that's a little bit warmer and maybe a little less sharp. So let's quickly run through all the different lenses we'll be trying out and then start testing. So before we go into each of these lenses and what sort of sets them apart, why is there this perception on the internet that zooms are worse than primes? I mean, from a raw image quality standpoint, sometimes primes can be marginally better or sometimes much better than zooms. We're going to see that's what the blind test is. But one reason people really like primes, apart from the form factor and how small they are, is because they often force the perspective in the sense that if I give someone a 25mm lens and tell them to shoot everything on a 25mm lens, I'm guaranteed to get wide coverage, right? So say I want a really wide and close look. If you have someone shooting on a 25mm lens, that's what they're going to get. Compared to a zoom, if you just tell someone you have a wide look, they might move with their zoom instead of with their body. So sometimes it's better, psychologically or it makes it easier and remove some of the thought out of the equation, because if you give an inexperienced operator a zoom, or even a really good operator, they might just start punching in and out. And if you had something very specific in mind, like you wanted all the conversations to be shot on a 50 and all the verite coverage to be shot on a 25, you can guarantee that look with primes much easier than you can with zooms. I've seen people when they're just learning sit in a corner with a zoom lens and just sort of stay out of the way and then just punch in and out. And that's not the way to get good framing. Whereas with a prime lens, you have to move your body. But with that said, I typically shoot on zooms because I work in small teams a lot of the time and I'm moving very fast, so I find these really convenient. So with those basics aside, what lenses do we have? The DZOs, these are my lenses. I own these. I like them a lot. I would say they have a slightly vintage-ish look, and they have a 2.1 aperture, which is decent but not amazing. And I think they weigh about, let's check the notes. Yeah, right around 2 pounds. So we'll convert that to metric if Santi, the editor, is paying attention. The smallest and most expensive of the primes, these are about $4,500 each, are these Cooke SP3s. These are, I guess, the successor to the really popular Speed Panchro 2s. They're tiny, obviously. They don't have the best low light. They're T2.4, which for a prime lens is a little bit slow, but I really love the form factor, and these are probably the ones I'm most curious about. Then we have the Sigmas, which are the heaviest of these three primes. These are just under 3 pounds, which is still pretty light for a cinema prime, but noticeably heavier than these and more than twice as heavy as this. So these are an interesting sort of neutral choice. A lot of DPs have these, and they are sort of a reliable fixture in the industry. So in the zoom department, we've got the Fuji MK Cinema Zooms. These are mine. I really like them. They come in a set. They're super light, but they are Super 35 only. They're the only lenses here that are Super 35 only. I don't care about Super 35 versus full frame necessarily. There are some parts of this, like the interview frames, where I definitely want to shoot on full frame. But for the verite coverage, I've never had a quality issue shooting Super 35. Then we have the Ingenues. These are the easy zooms. This one is either full frame or Super 35, depending on how you set it up. We have it in the full frame mode, and I think it's a 22-60. These are really popular on sort of higher end projects that need a zoom. You'll notice, especially in commercial and narrative worlds, people don't often like zooms, but Ingenue is a name synonymous with, cinema, so they sometimes trust it. I think this weighs about 5 pounds, just under. So it's definitely the heaviest lens here, but maybe that'll be compensated by just insane image quality. And like I said, I have liked these in the past, so we're shouting them out. These are also very slow lenses, even by zoom standards. These are T3s, so quite slow. And then lastly are the Laowa Rangers, and I own these ones as well. And these are my full frame alternative to the Fujis. Now, I'm really curious to see all of these out in the field, and I'm really curious for the blind taste test. Taste test?
Now for the taste test.
Really curious for the blind viewing test, because not only am I going to look for any standouts, beyond that, I really want to know what pairs with what as well. So I'll be really curious, like if this has a similar look to this, or if the Super 35 has a look closer to the Cooke and we decide we really like the Cookes, maybe we're going to pair them together. I'm really excited to test all this stuff out. I love these blind tests. They've proven very frustrating in the past, and I'm almost never right. So yeah, I think we're in for some entertainment later. But first, let's start running through our various shooting scenarios. And for the first one, we're going to be testing outdoor daylight and also operator experience from the point of view of walking through an urban environment. So let's get these on the camera, get on some jackets, and get outside and start freezing. Okay, so we're out here in February in Canada, which is super pleasant. Manuel's from Nigeria, so he's having the best time. We're going to do the first series of tests as just a basic follow and then reverse shot. We obviously want to see how good the lenses look, but these are sort of bright outdoor conditions, so I'm not going to be able to tell really through the monitor. Really what I want to know for this test is what they're like to operate. So we're just going to go up and down this path, forwards and backwards, and just get a sense of what it might be like to hold these lenses all day and shoot with them. So we're going to start with the lightest of the zoom lens, the Fuji, and then we'll get slightly heavier all the way up to the Ingenue and then switch over to the prime. And let's go backwards. So yeah, that was pretty good. These are my personal lenses, so no surprises there. They're really light, and these are, for me, very comfortable. I can do this for a really long time. Focus gears and the aperture control all works really well. So yeah, great from an operator standpoint. So now let's get this off and switch over to the slightly heavier and full frame Laowa Rangers. What do you think the combined total of this backpack is right now, like in terms of cash? Plus or minus 60 grand?
I think just about.
That's crazy. All right, so the next lenses we're going to test are the Laowa Ranger lights. They are slightly heavier. I don't know the exact weights. Maybe we'll put them on the screen, maybe not. But they are noticeably heavier, and especially because of this sort of extension tube, you need to adapt them to E-mount. A lot of the weight's up front, but still, this is like a 3-pound lens, so pretty light by cinema standards. These are also mine. I also own these, and I have used them, but not quite as much as the Fujis. The real difference between these and the Fuji is that these are full frame. So even though it's a 28 instead of an 18, we're shooting the full 6K sensor. So I don't actually know which one's going to be a wider field of view, but comparable anyways. So yeah, let's run this same test with these and see if I notice any difference as an operator. All right, Emmanuel, 1 sec. Okay, let's go. Hold on, stop. All right, so what to say? Pretty similar experience. I'd say the focus throw is a little less dampened. I noticed that between the Fujis. The weight is noticeable, but also totally manageable. It's a lot more front heavy. I can feel there's a fair bit more pressure pulling my wrist down, which over the course of a long day would add up. But if you were operating off an easy rig or shooting from the hip, something like that, it's still a very lightweight setup, all things considered. So don't know what the image looked like because I can barely see. I forgot the sun hood, rookie move. Now let's put on the heaviest lens, which is our Ingenue, which is like almost double what the Fujis were. So that should be a pretty noticeable difference. All right, so that is a noticeable difference. That's quite a bit heavier. Definitely by far our heaviest lens. And also because it's PL mount, it sticks out a little bit further. Both of the other lenses were E-mount semi-natively. The Fujis were definitely E-mount native. The Laowas were adapted, so they do stick out a little bit as well. But there wasn't much of a difference between the last two, but there's a big difference between these. And honestly, with this amount of weight and this amount of torque, I think this lens is like 5 pounds maybe, but with this amount of weight, really, we should probably be running a rail system with some support on this. It's probably too much torque on the mount, but we're not going to do that. And I don't really want to build up a rail system for this show. So I don't know, something to keep in mind. It's not terrible compared to something like a Cabrio or like a giant broadcast lens, but it's pretty heavy. All right, so impressions with this one. I mean, obviously the largest and heaviest. Quite a bit of pressure on my wrist. And if I'm being honest, it feels more cheaply made. Maybe that's because everything's focused on the internals, or maybe because this is a rental unit and it's been used by a million different people. I'm not really sure. But the reason this lens is here isn't necessarily because we thought it would be the nicest to use as an operator. It's because maybe it has image quality gold inside. So I'm going to reserve my judgment until we see it on a screen. But of the three to operate and move around with all day, this is my least favorite one. Now let's switch over to the primes, which should be a lot lighter. We'll start with the cheapest of them, the DZO Vespids. Yeah, so there we go, DZOs. We're shooting as wide as we can on all these primes. So this is the 25mm version. It's a T21, but it's so bright out, we're shooting at like F4 or T4 anyways. So we'll save the low light stuff for later. Compared to the Ingenue, it's a lot lighter. Yeah, I think it was quite nice. You could handhold these all day. So from an operator standpoint, it's great. Super light, easy to use, fantastic. Those were the Sigma full frame cine lenses, the fastest lenses we have today at T15, so they should be really good in the low light test, but right now it's too bright, so shooting at F4 doesn't really matter. Compared to the DZOs, they're a little bit heavier, but they're distributed a little differently. They're a bit shorter and fatter, so I didn't really notice a difference, even though on paper these are a bit heavier. The focus turn on this is a little bit more dampened, so it depends if you like that or not. All in all, really well made. I can barely see what I'm doing, so who knows how it looked right now, but yeah, pretty good to use. The last lens is also our most expensive prime, even though it is by far the smallest, and that's the Cooke SP3. You can see this thing is very, very small. I mean, this is one of the smallest primes I've ever used. It's sort of right up there with Leica R's in terms of tininess, so that's really interesting. They're the slowest of the prime lenses. These are only T28, so a T24, sorry. So right now it doesn't really affect us, but we'll see how it holds up in the low light. And also we weren't able to get a 24 or a 25 in this, so it's a little tighter. It's a 32mm. The wider ones weren't available, so the frame's going to be a little bit tighter, but we should still get the same basic idea of what it's like to use. I really like that. Those are tiny and almost weightless. I really like the length of the focus throw as well. A lot shorter than the Cookes and the Vespids, but you can go through the whole motion with one twist. I'm really intrigued by these. I would love to shoot with these all day. The only thing I want to add from an operator standpoint is that because they're so small, the main challenge is going to be using them with a matte box. With larger lenses like 77 or 82, you can get like clamp-on matte boxes really easily. I don't know that I'd do that with this, and they're just so short, like the matte box will be right here. So that's something to keep in mind. You're probably going to be running these lenses naked, or maybe putting a screw-on filter. Like, I know there's built-in ND in these cameras, but in broad daylight, you need more ND than that. So if you were hoping to use a matte box or additional filters, these are kind of an unusual and small size. All right, so that's all 6 of our lenses outside in an operator test. I mean, with how bright it was and forgetting the sunshade, it'll be a miracle if I got all of those in perfect focus the whole time. So we'll see how they look. Clear winners, I liked the Cookes a lot, and I liked the Fujis and Laowas kind of equally, and the Ingenues were definitely my least favorite to operate, but no surprises there. It's much bigger. So now let's go inside and we're going to do a very simple interview setup to see how these lenses all handle skin tones under controlled lighting situations. All right, so we're inside. It is much warmer, and we're going to do the second round of tests. And this is basically just to see how the lenses handle skin tones. So we're going to shoot at roughly 50 mil on a manual. We've got a basic interview setup, nothing crazy. Took us half an hour to rig up, and all I want to do is see if there's a distinct difference between how the lenses treat faces, especially under controlled lighting. So let's just run through these real quick. I'll give you any notes as they come up, but otherwise, let's just get through this because it's going to be a long video.
It's getting long.
So that's all 3 zooms done. Honestly, they all looked great. They pretty much look the same if I'm being honest, but 5 inches isn't quite enough space to be able to tell. We'll see a bit more later.
That's what she said.
Now we'll get the primes on here and run through all 3 of those and see if anything jumps out. Relative to the other lenses, this is the first one where I've noticed significant focus breathing. These Sigmas, really, there's a lot of movement here. It's not my favorite thing, not necessarily a deal breaker, but it's definitely there. And it's the first time I've noticed it today. That's pretty pronounced. Cool. Last lens. So that's the last of the lenses. No big surprises there. You know, on this tiny monitor, it's very hard to see if there were any, amazing image quality differences between them. We'll have to look at a computer for that. I did notice some slight variances in brightness. I shot them all at T2.8, except for the Ingenue, which is T3 minimum, but more or less the same thing. Form factor doesn't make any difference in this because it's on a tripod. So yeah, this test is really going to be proven in the blind test later when we actually look at them and see if there was a clear winner. So let's wrap all this stuff up and then we'll get outside for our last test, which is a low light test. All right, so for the last test of the day, we're going to drive around in this rented Hyundai in a residential part of Toronto and see what these lenses are like in low light. So we're going to shoot them wide open and just see if that's enough to work with ambient city light. And this is a great litmus test for documentary lenses for me because this is a very normal situation, following characters around in their lives. A lot of the time they're driving. And if you watch a lot of doc series, you'll see that really ubiquitous shot of the camera operator sitting in the passenger seat filming someone while they drive and they talk about their story. Yeah, it's a great test to see if these lenses can operate in this tiny enclosed space as well. So we're really getting 2 birds stoned at once. We're going to see what it's like to shoot these in the dark, and we're going to see what it's like to manually operate them in a confined space. What would it be like if you had to follow someone around all day, every day, with these lenses on? Fuji's were nice. They handled it well. There was, enough light. I feel like I could totally use this, and especially with a bit of a grade, no problem. Now let's switch to the Laowas. I wouldn't want to do this for hours. In fact, I might even be tempted to do this on an FX3 or something. I know that's an option before everyone starts shouting about it in the comments. Why didn't you use an FX3? The next lens, the Ingenue, is probably going to be pretty intense. So let's do a moving lens change. All right, so the Ingenue performed well, but really unpleasant to hold in that position. Now let's get into the primes and see if they do any better. Okay, first up is the Vespid. That is a refreshing change of weight after the Ingenues. So let's roll 20 seconds or so on these. Next up is the Sigma. This is by far the fastest lens at T1.5. And honestly, at minimum, it's almost too much, but not quite. Last but not least, the Cooke SP3s, our smallest lenses yet, which I'm kind of excited about. Okay, so we've got the Cooke SP3s on here. A joy from an operating experience standpoint. This is just so small and light, I could hold this all day. So yeah, there's a pretty decent little low light and a second user operator test for these lenses. Tech-wise and spec-wise, they all handled the low light, so it was kind of fine. It really came down to user experience. Granted, we are in a decently well-lit area, so I don't want to say that they were all incredible low light performers, but for reasonable low light use, shooting at ISO 4000, they were all okay. So I don't have any major concerns. From an operator standpoint, the primes were nicer than the zooms, and it was kind of lighter the better. The Ingenues were not pleasant to shoot with in this confined space. So yeah, pretty interesting little test. And now let's get all this footage back onto a computer, and then tomorrow we'll sit down and watch it and see what stands out. I'm extremely curious. All right, so it's time to actually look through this footage, and actually figuring out how to watch it back in a coherent way has been kind of confusing. We wanted to do first a grid of all 6, but there's just too much information to keep track of, and you're like constantly comparing everything. And then if you pause it, it's all blurry, so you don't get an accurate. Anyways, kind of hard to put 6 cameras up against each other. So we're just going to play them one by one by one, and we're going to take notes as we go, because the point of this test isn't, you know, can we correctly identify a lens? I mean, I guess that would be kind of fun, but it's not about picking which is which. It's about figuring out what characteristics each have and what we like, and whether or not there are any real standouts that are just head and shoulders above the rest. So we're just going to watch them one by one by one. We're going to take notes as we go, and we're going to try and guess which lens it is just for fun. But yeah, the main point is, what do we see? Are they super different or not? Let's just start watching and see how this goes. Our track record is not good in these blind tests. We will try to, if it's possible, we'll get editor Santi to try and put these, 1080 files for download somewhere, see how doable that is. But you won't be able to see much on YouTube compression, but you'll just have to take our word for it. So test 1, this is the outdoor follow shot.
Okay.
All right, lens A. All right, so what are the qualities of lens A? What do you see? Slightly greenish, a little greeny warm, not a ton of contrast. I feel like we're gonna do badly on this. Now, I will say this isn't 100% blind, because after we shot it, we did go through and look at, all the different shots just really quickly to see, make sure it was all in focus and stuff. And there are a couple quirks with some of these lenses, like how they flare, that might tip us off just in a couple of cases. So I'm not gonna pretend I've never looked at this, but everything's been shuffled in a totally random order. So I guess medium contrast. I mean, I think it looks good.
Yeah.
Should we watch and see how it looks compared to the next one?
Yeah.
Lens B is a lot warmer.
Yeah, and in fact, it's a lot more magenta.
I feel like that's a prime. I feel like B is a Vespid or a Sigma.
Okay.
I don't know why. I'm gonna say B is the Sigma. It just feels like it to me. Feels sharp and very neutral. C's quite warm. I have no idea.
Okay, this is definitely the ingenue. Lens D is 100% the ingenue.
Just because you can see the flare.
Yeah.
All right, so there's the one cheat. In the D comparison, the ingenue flares in a very specific way. You can see it just next to his head. Does it look way better than the others?
I wouldn't say. Everything has looked good so far, so it's not.
I mean, this test was meant for an operator test almost more than an image quality test, because it's just broad daylight. Lens E.
This looks less contrasty.
I mean, maybe that's the Sigma?
I think this is the, I think this is a zoom.
The Laowa?
Laowa. Just because of the magenta shift.
That's a good guess. So what is that? That's very neutral. Maybe I'm going to change. I think that's the Sigma. I mean, that's very neutral, very bright, very sharp. What I'm really taking away here is that they all look just fine. I mean, this test was meant to test operator comfort and user experience, but still a realistic documentary shot. And I don't think I'd be upset at any of these. Like none of them are standing out as like, this looks much better.
No.
All right, so we have to guess. A, B, C, D, E, F. All right, A, what's your guess?
I'm going to say A is the DDO.
Cook, Sigma. I'm going to say it's the Laowa.
Okay.
So then B, what do you think that is?
That's the Laowa.
You think B is the Laowa?
Yeah. I'm
going to say B is the Fuji. C, I do think is the SP3. Also a bit of a giveaway though, because it's a bit tighter, right?
Yeah, that's my other thinking.
D, that's a cheat, but and then F,
E,
A, B, C, D. E comes after D.
Yes.
In the English alphabet.
I think Sigma. I'm putting down E.
Yeah, I like that as a guess. I think E is Sigma as well. You picked F as...
Fuji.
And what am I even left with? Lawa, Fuji, SP3, Ingenue, Sigma, DZO. Okay. All right. You ready for this reveal?
Oh.
Completely wrong on everything but the Ingenue, which we...
Oh, no, I
Sigma.
got the last three right. I got the Ingenue, Sigma, and Fuji.
Okay. That's not bad. The one we both thought was the Cooks is the Lawa. That kind of makes sense that we flipped that Fuji and DZO, they're both on the warmer side. The Cook I'm surprised about because it was a different focal length.
Yeah.
It was a 32 versus a 24.
Uh-huh.
So I was expecting to be able to cheat my way into guessing that.
Yeah.
But that's funny.
Yeah.
There's a certain quality, there's this magical quality to the image, and then it's the least recognizable of all those lens brands.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. All right. Good to know. Next test is the indoor lighting. This is indoor lighting. This is going to be the one I'm most interested in from a quality standpoint. Like, I care what it looks like in the middle of the day, but I really care what it looks like on skin tones. I like it. It's not super punchy. It's not crazy sharp. I think this is one of the zooms.
Okay.
Which one? I have no clue. I'm going to say A is Lawa.
I'm going to go with DZO.
The DZO Prime. Okay. B.
I have that as Sigma.
Just to be different, I'm going to say that's DZO, but I do see it is a lot sharper, and I think that is a quality of the primes, maybe. This one I like a lot. I think this is the Ingenue. There's something about this. It's slightly tighter, so I can't let that fool me. His skin is like warm and realistic looking, and I like the way the highlights on the side are handled. They're punchy, but they roll off smoothly compared to something like this, which are just quite harsh to my eye. All right, so then D.
D is Fuji for me.
D is Fuji for you. That's a good guess. I like that. And then I'm going to say E is the Sigma.
I have as Lawa, so I know what F is.
I know what F is too. Yeah, there's a big difference there. All right. I mean, F is the only one that's really different. And we know from having a quick look that that's the Cook.
Yeah.
The Cook is really low contrast. And it also, this area here, you can see the difference between E and F, how punchy those highlights are. The way that it rolls from shadow to light is way less aggressive than the other lenses. So yeah, that one's a sure thing. So, okay. I feel a little more confident with this. I feel like these were a lot more different looking.
Yeah.
Right? 100%. I got them all.
Nice.
Wow.
I got 3.
Lawa, DZO, Ingenue, Fuji, Sigma, Cook. Okay. So on faces with light, there is a difference. Of the zooms, the Ingenues were definitely the nicest. The Cook also has the most character. I like the Sigma the least.
Okay.
I did not like E. I just found it a little too sharp and a little too punchy. It was the only one that kind of stood out to me is I don't really like this. So they do render skin in quite different ways. I think I'd probably try and shoot on the Cook or the Ingenue if I had to pick between the two. So the most expensive.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Just get the most expensive of everything and you'll be good. Yeah. All right. Final one. Okay. So for this test, we're going to do this one a little differently because when we sent this in to post, we realized that we had a corrupted clip. The V-mount battery got knocked off in the middle of the clip and we had to restore in the middle of the shoot, and we didn't think anything went wrong, but when we got back, we only had 5 clips instead of 6. So one of the lenses here is not represented. So we're going to do this a little differently. I'm going to close my eyes. Hank is going to pick one at random, and I'm going to open my eyes, and first impression is going to be my guess. Okay. But let's just make this interesting and go for it. All right.
Close your eyes.
Yeah.
All right. Open.
All right. I mean, it looks good. For some reason, I want to say it's the Cook. Because I don't know, something about the fall off on the face. All right, I don't exactly know why. I'm saying this is the Cook.
Okay. Closed. All right, open your eyes.
Okay. Lens A. This one's greener. I have no clue. This is a silly idea. What are we? This is a dumb game, and I don't like it. I'm gonna guess this is the Ingenue.
All right.
Okay. I mean, not the best run of luck with the lights, with the ambient.
Yeah.
Pretty dark in general.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely looks worse. That might not be the fault of the lens. I'm gonna see DZO on this.
Okay.
But again, like, all right, we'll just keep going here.
Lensy.
I don't know, it looked pretty good. I'm gonna say Fuji.
Okay.
And then there's one more and something's missing.
Yeah. Open. Yeah.
It does look a lot brighter.
Right, there's a lot of light.
I'm gonna say that's the Sigma.
Okay.
Just because it has that so much extra light. So the fact that the ambient is completely raised.
Yep.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So that means the Laowa is not there. The point of this test was, can they handle a low light situation? Yes. A reasonable low light situation, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Did any of them look better? Not really.
Yeah.
No clear winners.
Yeah.
So reveal it.
Yeah, let's see what they...
Lens A, Ingenue. Lens B is Sigma.
Got that.
Got that. Lens C is Cook. I got that. D is Fuji, and I guess DZO, so I'm wrong. I got D and E mixed up. Oh, you can see the vignette. So that's interesting. And the Fuji, yeah, I forgot to punch in from full frame to Super 35 mode.
Huh.
I didn't even notice that. But that's, you know, if everything else works full frame and the Fuji, you know, if we were mixing and matching, you would have to keep that in mind. If you forget, it doesn't look great. There's that big old vignette right there on the screen. I didn't do too bad.
Yeah.
I don't know why I can tell the Cook.
Yeah.
I knew it as soon as I saw it. It's like the contrast is just less harsh.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the takeaways here? Any of these lenses are good. Operator experience, no surprises there. The Cooks were extremely nice. On skin tones, we liked the Ingenues and the Cooks, so maybe more expensive glass does do something with skin, you know, there's some sort of rendering. What are my takeaways? What am I gonna do? I mean, it comes down to budget. I mean, I think what we want to do on this show is give everyone a nice set of primes and try to stick to that, but recognize that sometimes there are shooting situations when primes make no sense. Like it's just too fast moving, or you have to cover something like a big crowd scene on your own and you need a zoom sometimes. Could we afford Cooks and Ingenues? Maybe. We could probably stretch the budget and make that work, but the Ingenue is just so big. I think I'd give someone the Fujis or the Laowas interchangeably. Because I made this mistake, and this could happen, maybe it's easier to give them Laowas just so that everything stays full frame. I think the DZOs and Sigmas also could have done an amazing job as the main primes, but I love the fact that the Cooks are so small and look a little bit kooky and weird. So for this story, I'm gonna say the winning combination would be Cooks and Laowas. For a different kind of story, all of that would go out the window. You know, it's all about your budget, your story, the characteristics you want, the shooting environments you're going to be in. All right, very cool test. Extremely frustrating and annoying, and at the end of the day, any of it would look great.
Yeah.
If it's logistically possible, we will post downloadable versions of all these for yourself. So, Santi, if you can figure out a way to get these up on the internet for everyone to download, do it. If not, I'm sorry, get mad at me in the comments, and I hope that monster of a lens test video was useful. It was definitely interesting for me.
Yeah.
All right, see ya.